Welcome to everybody. My name is Glen Morgan. I'm with We the Govern. This is, we're going to be doing a live stream here. This is a new studio. I'm just trying this out here, seeing how this works, kind of a different format. So if you are watching the live stream, you're going to be able to watch my interview with Brian Heywood here for the first time in this sort of environment. And you'll get a treat because you're going to see whatever happens kind of behind the scenes. So that's what this program is today, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. Feel free to leave comments in the comment section down below and let me know what you think. So for many people who are driving around Washington State, they are seeing signs like this that say, "Vote yes, pay less," and they're wondering, what exactly is it about? And with me in the studio today is Brian Heywood, the guy who has sponsored Let's Go Washington, who is responsible for 4 initiatives now that are going to be on the ballot in November. And Brian, just for our viewers, if you could just give them a basic overview of why they're seeing these signs everywhere and why, if they got their ballot, and they might have in the last couple days, what those first 4 initiatives are all about. We'll get into more detail on them later, but let's just give us an overview.
You bet. Probably the one that's bringing the most attention is 2117, which is a repeal of the Carbon Commitment Act. And I think this was, when we first started, I thought that might be a well-intentioned bill trying to do something environmentally friendly, but the more we've dug into it, the more it's clear that this is basically a money grift by Jay Inslee and Olympia to take money off the backs of commuters with a hidden gas tax, essentially. So it's a repeal of that hidden gas tax, which impacts your groceries, it impacts your heating, and it impacts you at the pump. So this is repealing that carbon tax, the carbon auction mechanism that they've set up that just takes money from you in a hidden way. It was so egregious they had to sort of hide it, right? And that way you didn't know, and they could pretend like, oh, we don't know if it's going to impact you or not. So that's the first one, 2117, repeal the carbon tax. And the repeal, one of the interesting mechanisms here is you vote yes on each of these to get rid of the bad thing, right?
Right.
So vote yes, pay less. We've made that our motto because each one of these is somehow a tax on you. It costs you money somewhere in your life. So vote yes, pay less. The second one is the 2124, and this one is not necessarily a repeal, but it's 2124 allows people to either opt in or opt out of the Washington CARES Act. And we can go into that in a lot more detail, but the Washington CARES Act sounds like a great thing. Oh, well, that, who would be opposed to that? And we're not trying to destroy it. We're simply giving you an option to get in or out of it. But it's supposed to be a long-term CARES. That's how they originally called it. It's $36,000 capped lifetime benefit, which is 2 to 5 months max for someone who needs long-term care. And it's run all the other long-term care options out of business, essentially, because the state is sponsoring this thing. So it's reduced choice. It's trapped people in it. A group of about 500,000 people were originally exempted from it. And then everyone else is trapped. And so this basically says if you got out early and you want to get back in, you can get in. If you're trapped in it and you don't want to be paying it, you can get out. The 2109 is the capital gains tax. And this is, there's sort of 2 parts to this. One is, I believe that capital gains tax is something, not having a capital gains tax is one of the reasons that this state has been so blessed economically. We have been a beacon and a mecca for businesses to come in and set up here and to draw entrepreneurs from all over the world coming into our economy, and really has made Washington State vibrant. And immediately when they implemented the capital gains tax, those that were going to be affected by it first moved out. And the revenue has already come down, and the intention on this is the second part. This is really an attempt by the legislature. They've tried 10 times at the ballot to get an income tax. That's been rejected, rejected, rejected. This is a backdoor attempt to get an income tax by sort of using the envy of the rich to sneak it in. And then the fourth one is the 2066.
Right.
And this is just a proactive, straight up stopping the state from banning natural gas.
Right.
And the state has sort of pun intended, they've gaslit multiple times saying, no, there is no natural gas ban, but there's a building code commission implemented a natural gas ban on new construction.
Right.
It's in the plan. They have to do it at some point with some of the ridiculous goals and the timing that they've set. So there will be a natural gas ban unless 2066 is passed, in which case there won't be a natural gas ban. Right. And it's a protection of your choice. And it doesn't mean you have to use natural gas, really. Right. If you want to go all electric, knock yourself out. We really are looking at energy choice is the key driver here. So natural gas, you want to do, if you've got some kind of hydrogen technology in your house, that's fine too, but don't take natural gas away.
Now, all 4 of these are associated with Let's Go Washington. 3 of them were clearly launched as initiatives to the legislature, and now they're on the ballot because the legislature decided that they didn't want to vote for those. And then the 4th one, which is the natural gas one you just spoke about, that one's an initiative to the people. And all of these Let's Go Washington has sponsored. This has been a long process for you.
It has. We've been doing it. Well, we started really 2 years ago in 2022.
Right.
Just sort of trying to understand the system when we ran 11 initiatives. We didn't collect enough signatures, but we learned a huge amount about how the process works and what doesn't work. And one of the big things was that if you have to get 400,000 for either initiative to the people or to the legislature, you need over 400,000 signatures. And no volunteer organization in the state has the capacity to get the sheet of paper to be signed in front of that many people. You need a huge volunteer army, and on top of that, we needed to bring in some paid signature gatherers just to get the distribution far enough in the state that people could see it.
And essentially, this is the first time in state history, I do talk about the overall issue here is that this is the first time in state history, I think, where we've seen this many consequential initiatives on the ballot simultaneously.
I think it's not only is it first in history in the state, it's first in history in the nation to do this many initiatives. Because remember, we got 3 initiatives that have already been passed by the legislature.
That's right.
So we've done a total of 7 within just coming up on a year period now. So.
That's right. Yeah, and just within the last year. I mean, it's very consequential. It's very significant. And I know I get questions from people all around the state saying, oh, I just got these initiatives, what should I do? And what's your message to people out there who just got their ballot and they're wondering what to do about these initiatives?
Vote yes, pay less, right? That's the
yeah, it's an easy thing to remember. Yeah,
I think that's I would strongly encourage people to get informed.
Right.
You should know what you're voting for. I believe you shouldn't just do things knee flex ideologically. So they can go to our website, and we have, and that's letsgowa.com. Letsgowa.com. No apostrophe, just letsgowa.com. And we have several. We've got several educational videos, anywhere from 6 to 10 minutes for each of the initiatives, and it gives you a pretty good history of how the law that we're sort of addressing came to be, what the problems are with that law, and why they should vote for the initiative to essentially get rid of some of these really, I think, stupid things that have come out of Olympia.
And I did see those videos. I thought they were really good. I like the animation that's used there. So that's a great way for people at least to get the other side of the story. Because right now they're getting about $20 million worth of ads paid for by big companies and billionaires attacking you and attacking the initiatives all around the state. And I think we'll get into maybe a discussion about some of these initiatives in a little bit more detail. So, and I think the first initiative that I would like to talk about is going to be, and this will be for those of you who've driven around Washington State. I am sure you have seen these signs. They are everywhere. This is vote yes, pay less, but it's I-2066, stop the gas ban. If you've seen these signs, in the studio with me today is Brian Heywood, who is the prime sponsor of Let's Go Washington, who has really helped make it possible for you not to see the signs out there, but to have the option to vote on this initiative on your ballot, which should be in your mailbox either today or shortly. You may have already received it. And Brian, so if you want to tell people about this initiative and what's going on here.
So I-2066 is a partial response to a law that was put in place on the second to last day of the session. And it was at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. There was some arm wrangling, and I'm told that Governor Inslee called in certain legislators, Democrat legislators, into his office, where he bluntly told them that if they didn't support this, he was not going to sign the bills that they had gotten passed during session. It was ill thought out. Denny Heck famously said, "This is a hot mess." It was poorly thought out, poorly written.
And Denny Heck is the lieutenant governor.
Lieutenant governor,
right?
Democrat lieutenant governor.
That's right.
Who and has a role in the Senate because of that, right? And he looked at it, said it's a hot mess. This is poorly written. It's poorly thought out. It was rushed through. You know, I don't. Anything that happens after midnight, you know, your mom tells you it's usually not a good thing, and I think that applies to legislation as well. So this law was rushed into place. They made it, and I think in a way fortunate for us, but the legislature has learned that if you make something if you put an emergency clause in it, you can't repeal the law, right? You can't use what's called a
referendum.
A referendum.
Yep.
And the reason that's important is a referendum only takes about 200,000 signatures to get on the ballot. It's much easier, and you have this very short time frame, right? You only have from sort of May until the end of May, really, until July 10th to get it on the ballot. And that means you've got to get, if you do initiative to the people, you need 400,000 signatures in that 48-day time span. And because they put an emergency clause in, you couldn't do the repeal, the referendum repeal, which only takes 200,000, right? Much easier to do in that time frame. So they didn't make it easy for us. But as we were looking at it, and we formed a partnership with BIAW, the Building Industry Association of Washington. And it was I think it was a very constructive partnership that we could use again in the future. The sort of the structure of it is something we could use if Olympia does stupid things again, right? This was this impacted industry, it impacted citizens. We can put those two forces together, and we can run. It's not my goal to be an initiative guy, but we can run them again. So what 1589 did was initially in its first form,
and that's the bill number when you say
1589 was the bill in the legislature.
Right.
The original bill actually banned natural gas, any new hookups. It was so unpopular on both sides that they took that provision out. That was the intent, but they took it out. And then they changed it to basically make it financially lucrative for Puget Sound Energy to begin to back away from natural gas.
Right, that was the payoff.
That was the payoff.
Right.
And, what we looked at, well, do we go after 1589? And then decided, no, let's back off of 1589 completely, and let's proactively say, make a statement, make it very clear, the citizens, and this is all, if the citizens don't support it, then it doesn't matter, but citizens don't want the state government to be dictating what sort of energy they can or cannot use in their home. And this is the camel's nose under the tent. You ban natural gas, propane was coming next. There would be all kinds of limits on what could and couldn't be used. They're even stupidly talking about hydro, getting rid of the dams because hydro is not renewable, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And so we went, 2066 was crafted to do a couple of things. All same subject, just in case anyone wants to misinterpret that. The subject is basically stopping the state from banning natural gas. It gets rid of the building code, building council code, or whatever their name is. It gets rid of their arbitrary regulatory ban on natural gas. So it says the state can't ban it, the regulators can't ban it, and you can't do something with natural gas that makes it so expensive that it's a de facto ban. Because they play tricks, right? Okay, all right, we won't touch your natural gas, except for we're going to make it so expensive you can't afford or can't use natural gas.
Now, thematically, Let's Go Washington's always had this tagline since it was started about fix what's broken in Washington State. So when it comes to this initiative, what do you think this initiative kind of highlights that's broken in the current government of Washington State?
What it highlights is the arrogance of Olympia, right? Olympia thinks that they can come up and run our lives. They can tell us what sort of fuel that we can use in our house, how we can heat our home. And they're sitting down in Olympia, but they're not thinking about that person on the western side of the mountains who gets heavy snow, and then our electric system goes down, our electric grid goes down, and it does. And I was just in a debate where like, oh, you're scaremongering, it never goes down. Are you kidding me? Every year it goes down, right? And sometimes week or 2 weeks. Right. Oh, it's only a week or 2 weeks. That's enough to kill somebody in a frozen zone, right?
Right.
I'm a mind boggled. So I think what we're highlighting here in a way is, in part, is the arrogance of Olympia to think, and the arrogance to think that they can make decisions for us in every aspect of our lives,
right,
including how we heat our homes. But it's not, natural gas is one that it impacts and maybe they don't think about this, it impacts what kind of food you eat, what kind of food you cook. It impacts, breweries can't do beer without natural gas. It impacts farming.
Yeah,
farming. Impacts, we were at a grocery store that I didn't know that natural gas was used to run their refrigerators. It is a great backup. And it was just a few years ago, and this is the other thing I think in a way that it highlights, right? How long ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago, that we were spending 2 or 3 times as much money per bus to switch all our buses out from diesel to natural gas because we were told natural gas is the clean energy, right?
Right.
There were signs all over the buses, natural gas, the clean energy choice. Okay, but it cost us 2 to 3 to 4 times as much per bus. And Olympia just doesn't care. It's not their money. They're taking your money. They can spend it however they want.
Right.
For every single natural gas bus, we could have bought new, cleaner diesel buses, and it would have saved the cities and the counties gobs of money. But they don't care because there's this never-ending thirst and no accountability, right? And I think all these things are sort of highlighted in each of these. And that's one of the things that I found out is as I dove into these subjects, it's not just this simple topic. You're voting on whether to stop the government from banning natural gas. That's the simple thing you're voting on. But there is a whole ecosystem behind each of these laws that is dependent on taking more of your money.
Right.
And this is a pushback against that.
Well, this is the first initiative people will see on their ballot because it's an initiative to the people. And so thank you for that explanation, Brian. And if people want to know more about this particular initiative, where should they go?
Go to Let's Go WA. You can find every single initiative we have right on the front page. There's a video for each of the 4. And then you can dive in on Let's Go WA. You can go onto our page. We've got the complete text of each initiative, so you can read that. There are testimonials. There is a video voter guide there. We also have a YouTube channel now. We're trying to be like the great Glen Morgan.
Yeah.
Try to follow in your steps. We're still in the baby stages of that, but we'd encourage people to go to our YouTube site where they can see videos about these, and then, and just get yourself informed. Right?
And the election's coming up now, so
the ballot. I got my ballot yesterday.
Okay, so there we go. Brian, thank you so much for coming to the studio, explain about I-2066.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, I wanted to talk today to Brian Heywood, who is the prime sponsor of Let's Go Washington and Washington State. And if you've been seeing signs like this all over Washington State that says vote yes, pay less on I-2117, and you're wondering, what exactly is this about? And you have your ballot and you see this initiative on it under this number. I thought I'd have Brian Heywood in the studio, the guy who sponsored this program, who made it happen so that we actually have this opportunity to vote on this initiative. And Brian, thought you would be able to tell our viewers today exactly what is I-2117, what does it do, and why are so many billionaires and every single big major corporation from BP to Amazon to Microsoft and Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates and Nick Hanauer and others, why are they attacking you and why are they so angry about this initiative?
They love me, right? That's really, that's how they express their love. I
there
think.
We go.
Yeah. Mad, angry pamphlets and lots of money. 2117 was pitched as a bold step for Washington State to take to address climate change issues. And in particular, the focus was on carbon emissions.
The original Climate Commitment Act.
The Climate Commitment Act,
right.
Yes. And that was the idea, was that this would go towards reducing carbon output in the state. Because I think I'm going to try to be as straightforward and also editorialize at the same time. I believe that they poll tested market-driven solutions polls much better than top-down state dictates, right?
Yeah, central
And
planning doesn't
central
poll as
planning
well as they want
seems
it
to have a bad reputation, and you can't figure out why.
Yeah.
So this is a market-driven solution, is what they claimed, because look, there's a market. We're doing these auctions, and maybe we can take a little bit here and just explain how the auctions work, because I think that's important to understand. The state set up this auction plan where those who produce energy, and it's sort of funny. Jay Inslee says the polluters. They calls them that, and these are people that a country without energy is a poor country, and poor countries live in terrible, terrible environmental conditions. I've been to those countries. We are blessed with enormous energy, and because of that, we have a much cleaner environment and much better living. But so we set up this auction, and it basically I'm just going to make up the numbers though, but it says
the state
set up the auction.
Yeah.
I claim Washington residency, so I sort of
Yeah.
I didn't do the auctions. The state set up the auctions, and the auctions essentially create credits that you can buy at auction in order for you to sell energy in the state, right? And all the people that are in that business then have to compete with each other to buy these credits. And there's a limited number of credits. Let's say the first year there's only, let's say, 100 credits. I don't know how many there are, but let's say there was just 100. Everyone can buy into it. And depending on whether you think depending on your outlook for what's going to happen next year and the next year and how much money you have, you're willing to bid up higher or lower on what you think other people will do. And so it creates sort of a market environment. But there's a minimum price, and they charge you per ton of carbon output. And it's right, the minimum price per ton of carbon output is $25, $24 I think it is. And when they put the auction in place, nobody knew what was going to happen, and immediately the price shot up to $60 per carbon ton. And if you're trying to figure out, well, what does that mean and how does that impact me? What it looks like in the way that pricing it was impacted is that we end up paying at the pump about a penny per gallon per dollar per ton. In other words, if it's $60, we're going to pay 60 cents per gallon for gas.
The consumer.
The consumer will. And it's roughly been that, right? We've been anywhere from, the auctions have gone between $25 and $60 per ton, and our price has been anywhere from 25 cents to 50, 60 cents per gallon.
But no matter what it is, no matter what that price is, we pay more at the pump.
We pay.
Yeah.
And I've called it a hidden tax because they designed it to be a hidden tax, right? So the original idea was, we'll do this, we'll set these auctions up, and then every year we'll reduce the number of credits, right? It'll increase the price, and in theory, people will quit driving fossil fuel vehicles, and we'll reduce carbon, right?
Right.
The problem is it doesn't take any carbon out of the atmosphere at all.
Right.
It hasn't done any now. Next year, when they reduce it, what it means, if 2117 is not passed, if it's rejected, next year the price of gas will go up. It was designed to do that. And then the next year there's fewer credits, and it'll go up again.
And it's not just gas that you put in your car, but it's also your heating costs at home, because I know our AG Bob Ferguson intervened and told the power companies that they weren't allowed to put a line item to tell consumers this is how much more you're paying because of the Climate Commitment Act thing.
Absolutely. And you pay it at the gas. If you think about it, you pay it in a couple of ways in your groceries.
Right.
Any truck that hauls groceries to your local grocery store has to pay this hidden gas tax. That means the prices for transportation are up, which means the prices you pay for groceries are going to go up. Cold storage. I was just up at Bellingham in the cold storage. The 19th largest cold storage facility in the entire United States is up in Bellingham. And their costs are going to double because of this CCA increasing the cost of electricity. They were paying like 3.5 cents per watt, and it's going to go up to 7. And it'll double. And that, if they're paying it, that doesn't mean they just eat the cost.
Right.
They either go out of business, which makes everything more expensive, or they pass that cost on. So everything that you have in the frozen section is getting impacted there. And then it gets on a truck where it's more expensive there. It's not like there's little teeny impact.
Right.
It's this multiplying cumulative impact that you're feeling. There's a reason when you shop and you go, man, it feels like groceries are more expensive. There's a reason, and it's not just a little bit.
Right.
There's a reason when you look at your electric, and I would encourage people online, one of the things I'd encourage people to do, go look at your electric bill and your gas bill from a year ago, compare it to this year, and post it online if there's a difference.
Or a couple years even.
Yeah,
look at the trend.
Yeah, look at what's gone on.
So what 2117 does, explain what that actually does for our
It
viewers.
repeals that whole carbon, that whole hidden gas tax.
Okay.
Repeals it.
Okay.
And so and what that does is it immediately takes $2 billion away from the government. And when I say that, though, really what it does is it stops the government from taking $2 billion of your money every year.
Right.
One of these, we can't afford it. I think one of the funny things is the no on 2117 says, we can't afford it, right?
Yeah.
And I've been watching, who can't afford it? Well, the government can't afford to stop taking your money, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, they don't care if you can't afford to live.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But they don't want to stop this kind of, and I've
don't stop the money train.
Yeah, don't stop the money train, the gravy train, because it seems like they're doing a lot of kickbacks. And I think that one of the arguments, what's impressive here is BP, which is British Petroleum, supposedly one of these evil petroleum
Energy
companies.
Polluters. Yeah. But once you give money to Jay Inslee, you're no longer a polluter.
Right. Yeah. And so what happens is they're one of the biggest opponents of repealing this tax.
And I find that so this is crony capitalism at its worst, right? Capitalism, for all of its faults, it can't really beat up on its competitors except through the market unless there's regulation. And regulation, if there's big regulation that affects everybody, and you're a big company, if you're one of the biggest in the world, you have millions of dollars to spend on lobbyists and on people to help craft the laws so they benefit you and hurt the little guy. And British Petroleum is up to its neck in doing this, right? Oh no, we're innocent, we didn't do anything, we just care about the environment. No, they're trying to make profits. I mean, that they're just like everybody else, and I don't have any problem with them trying to make profits.
Right.
I do have a problem when they begin to use the mechanisms of government to benefit them, to cost the consumer, and destroy the market. And I believe that's what British Petroleum is doing.
And so that's, in summary, when people see I-2117 on their ballot, as they should see it, I think that's the number, the second one on the ballot,
yes, yeah.
What do they need to know?
Vote yes, pay less, right?
And where can they go to find more information?
Go to letsgowa.com. We have videos there that you can watch that'll give you a history of the whole CCA and how it came about. And I think another thing they should know is that we're not tracking how the money's being spent.
The state isn't.
The state's not. Thank you for correcting me on that. The state is not tracking how the money's being spent and whether it is effective or not. And this, to me, is one of the things that sort of burns me the most. There's a belief that if we spend the money, things will get better. But if you really believed in your soul that this is an existential threat and we don't have time to waste, that we need to do this now, accountability should be number one on your priority list. And it's not. They have no mechanism to track how that money they took from you is being spent in terms of its effectiveness for helping the environment. And that's what they need to remember, is that this is it's not helping the environment, it's just a tax on you.
And so, once again, if any of our viewers want to learn more,
letsgowa.com,
Okay.
www.letsgowa.com.
Brian, thank you so much for coming in the studio today and talking about this initiative. I know they're spending tens of millions of dollars attacking it, so it's good to have at least to hear right from the source what's going on with this initiative. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
All right, I know many of you out there are probably wondering what's going on when you see these signs out there along the side of the road. Initiative 2109, vote yes, pay less. What exactly is going on out there? You probably got your ballot and you've seen these initiatives and you're wondering what's going on and what are they all about. So I'm very honored to have in the studio with me today Brian Heywood from Let's Go Washington, prime sponsor, and the main reason why you actually see these signs everywhere and why it's on your ballot today. And so, Brian, if you could just explain for our viewers exactly what is I-2109 and why does it matter for Washington State residents?
2109 repeals the capital gains tax that was implemented in this state. And our Constitution in Washington State prohibits any sort of income prohibits any sort of progressive income tax. And that includes, because 49 other states plus the IRS plus the dictionary define capital gains as an income tax, it would preclude the state from doing a capital gains tax.
And for clarification, who are the only people that don't believe that it's defined that way?
Apparently, the Supreme Court of Washington State is the only. This was billed as not an income tax, but an excise tax. It went to the Supreme Court of Washington State, who are completely unbiased. The fact that Janesley appointed all of them has nothing to do with the fact that they ruled this way. 2109 then repeals that capital gains tax. The Supreme Court ruled that the capital gains tax was in fact an excise tax, which is sort of like a sales tax, right?
Right.
And would effectively, at its sort of extreme, allow Washington State to charge you a sales tax on anything you bought anywhere or sold anywhere, which is sort of a crazy idea. This is really simple. It just repeals the tax and says we shouldn't do it. Now, why is it important? And I think there's a couple of elements to this. Number one, straight on its face, we're one of about 7 or 8 states that don't have a capital gains tax, don't have an income tax. And I believe that one of the robust pillars of our economy here in Washington State has been the very fact that we don't have a capital gains tax. Bezos came and set up here
with Amazon.
With Amazon.
Right.
And what I hear from opponents, well, they didn't actually say it was because of the capital gains tax. And then he left, the 2 years when the capital gains tax was implemented, he didn't sell, he'd sell stock every year before that. And then those 2 years he didn't sell any stock. And then he moved to Florida to be with his mother, and he started selling stock again, right?
Right.
And the opponents, it's almost laughable. There's no evidence whatsoever that anybody's ever moved out of this state because of capital gains tax. They keep saying, there's studies that show that rich people won't move because of their state. I don't care what your study says. Ken Fisher told the state, if you're doing a capital gains tax, I'm moving my business out of here. He moved to Texas.
Right.
Bezos didn't say it was because of the tax, but his actions speak very loudly that he came here because of it and left because of it.
And I remember back in the late 90s, one of the main recruiting tools that tech companies were using to bring people, especially highly compensated workers, to Washington State to work in a variety of startup companies here at the time, was that it allowed them to give them stock options,
right.
And it was considered a benefit
right.
at the time. So it's funny that the exact same people, probably many of whom were sold on that originally, are claiming that that's not an issue here.
Well, but also then the state on its own website, until really recent, until we put the capital gains tax, the state basically said, come to Washington State, it's beautiful, it's safe, there is no income tax, no capital gains tax, and our schools are wonderful, right? And that was the pitch.
Right.
That's gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
and
they
so
don't even
there was sort of a
pretend.
bait and switch for anybody that came here.
Right.
And I believe that entrepreneurs from all over the world, we got some of the smartest people in the entire world coming into our state to be here, in part because of the lack of a capital gains tax.
Well, and something else that you brought up, and I heard this in a forum, and it was really one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of get the chance to interview you and talk to you about this a little bit more. Talk about the nature of this tax and some of the kind of sneaky backdoor discussions, some of which have come out in the public now with records requests and other things, that this tax is kind of used as this wedge to get even worse policy coming up.
Yeah, well, we've called it a backdoor income tax, right? It's designed to do that. Senator Jamie Peterson in the legislature here in Washington, in several internal memos, clearly states that the intention of the capital gains tax was to get it passed, and then get sort of the right to challenge it, get it into court in the Supreme Court, get the Supreme Court to overturn Washington precedent.
Right, for 100 years.
For 100 years of precedents, to get them to overturn it, and that would then allow them to have a mechanism to create an income tax. And then when it was passed and the money was coming in, another memo, again from Senator Peterson, said, we don't really care about the money that's coming in, which sort of belies the whole reason that they claimed the tax. And I think that's something else we need to get into, is what's the tax being supposedly used for?
Right.
But we don't care about that. This is really, it's a mechanism to get an income tax. And so then there's a third piece to this. the clear intention was, by hook or crook, we have to get an income tax in this state somehow. And the capital gains is the only place that they've been able to so far get it to stick. It's like a barnacle on a ship, right? That they're trying to get this thing on. There was a bill, 5335. People can look it up on the legislator website. 5335 was a sort of a healthcare tax. It implemented a 10% income tax, right, or payroll tax. They were going to put it on. Right. And then if you go down to like page 375 or whatever, there's an additional capital gains tax. And on the first, and so right now the capital gains, what the claim is, well, it won't impact you. It only impacts 4,000 people. Right. It's at $250,000 of profit. Mm-hmm. What this new bill, 5335, which didn't pass, by the way, didn't pass yet, but it's been implemented. You can tell where the intentions are. 5335 lowers the threshold from $250,000 down to $15,000. Right. And then it creates a new tier of 8%. Right now there's a 7.5% is the rate at $250,000. Creates a new tier of 8% at $15,000 and then 15.5% up at $250,000, which would take us from the lowest capital gains tax in the entire nation to the very highest.
With just one pass of one legislation. And I think that's, when I heard you talking about that, and I know you posted it on your X feed as well, just some of that information, and it's I think important for people to understand that once the camel's nose is under the tent, boy, this isn't just a slippery slope theory. This is right away the plans of existing state legislators today is to jack that up as much as possible and make sure that it affects everybody.
They'll have to, and I think there's a second part of this. Jeff Bezos moved away. Ken Fisher moved away. These people are moving away. The first year, the total take of the capital gains tax was around $700,000. The next year, it was only $400,000. It got cut in half, and I think it'll keep going down because people with that kind of wealth will, well, two things. One, capital gains fluctuate with the economy and what's going on, and number two, people make economic decisions to sell or not sell or move assets. And I believe that number is going to shrink even further. So then what happens is the state starts making budget plans using that money, but they're going to run out because this money is not dependable and people will leave. And so then they'll have to go, they'll have to. It's part of the design, right?
Design,
this was the design.
Right.
They're gonna, like, they can pretend like, oh, woe is me, like the rich people left and we didn't see that coming. In fact, we told you they wouldn't. The next piece will be, right now, real estate is exempt and your retirement is exempt. Right. But those are like two big, fat, juicy targets that are sitting there. And I believe the next step will be, oh, well, now we've created all these programs that need money from the capital gains tax. We need to tax your real estate. We need to tax your home. We need to tax your retirement. And those will come next within 3 to 5 years.
So this bill, or this initiative, I should say, this initiative repeals the entire, just straight up repeals that tax.
Straight up repeals the tax.
And if people want to know more and find out more about this, where would they go?
Go to letsgowa.com. letsgowa.com. There's no apostrophe in it. And we have videos about the initiative itself. We've got the language of the initiative so you can read that for yourself. And we'll links to other information.
And when they see it on their ballot, Brian, what should they do?
Vote yes, pay less.
I really appreciate you coming in the studio today talking about this initiative. I think as we've seen, millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars are being spent to oppose it. So it's good, I think, for our viewers to get a chance to actually hear it from the guy who's helped put it on the ballot and hear it for themselves. So with that, I want to thank you so much for coming in the studio on this one and telling our viewers what they need to know about it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now, if you are around Washington State and you're driving anywhere and you have seen an initiative sign out there, because it's a campaign season and campaign year, and you see initiative 2124, vote yes, pay less, and this initiative is out there, and you've seen these signs and you're wondering what's going on, and you got your ballot and you're wondering all these initiatives, what's happening, I thought we'd bring in the studio today the man who has actually been more responsible than anybody else for getting these on your ballot and getting this as an opportunity for you to vote on it. And that is Brian Heywood with Let's Go Washington, prime sponsor of Let's Go Washington. Brian, why don't you tell our viewers all about Initiative 2124 and why people should vote for it on their ballot.
2124 does not repeal anything. All it does is opens up a window for people to opt in or opt out of the Washington CARES Act. The Washington CARES Act was passed maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and there was such an outcry of anger about how poorly designed it was that Governor Inslee sort of delayed the implementation until last year in August. What it's supposed to do in its theory is provide support for end-of-life care or later years care, right? And the initial name was long-term cares, the Long-Term Cares Act. It's so not long-term cares, they had to change it to the WA CARES Act.
And they didn't want to call it short-term cares.
Yeah, they couldn't call it. Yeah, they couldn't call it the short-term uncaring bill, short-term rip-off fraudulent insurance bill, which is probably a better name for it. But it was designed to have a capped amount of money that you get after paying a long time into the program. So you pay your whole life into the program, and it'll give you a capped amount of about $36,000. For anyone that has recently taken care of a loved one in a nursing home or any kind of healthcare long-term facility, you know, that's, if you're lucky, it's 5 months, right? It's really 2 to 5 months of care. Oh, well, it can also, it can be used for things like wheelchair ramps or those sort of things. So the claim is sort of disingenuous. It's really this small one-time payment of some stuff. It does not replace your long-term care. It doesn't provide long-term care. And if you're relying on it to be your long-term care solution, it is a horrible solution. It was designed with a flaw. It was so flawed. This is how flawed it was. The Seattle Times has now twice come out against it, right? They came out against it when it came out, and they even endorsed our initiative. The Seattle Times endorsed our initiative.
Which is amazing.
That's how
bad it is.
That's how terrible this thing is, right?
Right.
The Seattle Times endorsed our initiative. And so if we talk about what are the flaws in it, number one is it's not long-term at all, right? The 36,000 cap. Most long-term care plans, and they're not necessarily cheap, right? And that's certainly true. But the long-term care plans keep giving you, there's not a cap on them, right? It's not this short cap. The system is set up that you have to pay into it for 10 years. And then once you've been in it at least 10 years, you begin to you qualify for payments. The problem is that and this wasn't like accidental, it wasn't oversight. They designed into it mechanisms that would kick certain people out, that would take their money and make them ineligible. So number one, let's start with seniors. 50% of Washingtonians that retire move to another state. That was part of the planning. They knew that. And so initially there was no plan in the bill to make it portable. If you don't stay and retire in the state, you don't get the money. And they had years to fix that. They didn't fix it. They didn't even attempt to fix it until this year when my initiative qualified. And then they suddenly went, oh, we made it portable. So in theory, you can, now if you move to another state, if you move to Idaho, in theory, you could, but no other state has a mechanism like this. And so there's really nothing, there's no interface there. And from what I can tell, the paperwork, like you got to have a master's degree in rocket science and form filling, right? So to be able to qualify for it. So they just created more, it's in name only, it's portable in name only. So number one, it discriminates against anybody that moves out of the state. Even with the portability, it's still a very, very terribly designed. Number two, it discriminates against women. And it discriminates against them in two very specific ways. One is, if a young woman graduates from college at 21, then goes to work for Microsoft and works there for 9 years, so now she's 30, and she decides to take time off, and she takes 5 years off to raise her kids. If she hasn't worked the full 10 years, but takes 5 years off, she has to go back and start at year 0.
They just take the money and
it's
write
gone.
it off.
Yeah, sorry, thank you for that money very much, we're gonna go. And this was by design, right? And they couldn't have not, just looking, I know there's men that take time off, so I don't mean to suggest anything like they should or shouldn't do that. just statistically, just looking at what actually happens in the real world, which I know they don't spend much time in.
Yeah.
In the real world, this is going to disproportionately impact mothers. So this is sort of, let's call it a mommy tax, right? A mommy penalty really is what's going on here. The second way that it impacts women is that more often women, and the opposition says this as well, women more often than men take time off to help the loved one.
Right.
So when that happens, what the opposition is pitching is, well, this money can help that person, they can give that person money. But if that person takes 5 years off, they got to start back over at year 0, right?
Right.
So you're discriminating all over the place against women. It discriminates against anyone that is disabled.
Right.
So if you are, you're working, but you can't work, there's a requirement to work 500 hours a year, and they're talking about moving that up to 1,000 hours a year. If you're working and disabled, you can only do 350 or 400 hours a year. You pay into this every year, your entire life, every paycheck, every single paycheck, it comes out, and you'll never get a benefit. You don't qualify for a benefit.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they, right? And it was designed. These things it was designed in, and if it wasn't designed in, they had 2 years to fix it. And if they didn't fix it in those 2 years, they could have, in session, they could have, and this is the really dishonest part on theirs, they could have created an initiative to compete with this initiative that would have fixed all those things. They could have come out and said, no, here's a different initiative. You should vote on this one because it fixes all those things that Heywood's complaining about.
Right.
They didn't.
Right.
They just complained and said, no. So this is a vote yes, pay less, and really what you're doing in this one is getting an option to opt out.
Right, the choice. You get
the
choice. Now, the one thing I think, and I've talked about this originally, that when they first had the bill proposed, was about how if a private business ever were to provide something like this, they go to prison for fraud. Yeah, I mean, instantly they would go to prison for fraud. There wouldn't even be, it'd be so bad that they would know that right away. And the second thing is, one of the biggest supporters of this concept had been SEIU, the SEIU union. Talk about that if you can.
Yeah, let me talk about the first one, because I think that if I had offered this as a private insurance option, exactly designed as it is, Bob Ferguson would be suing me, and any money he got from me, he would be sending out to seniors, as a chicken check.
As a vote buying check.
Yeah, here, vote for me, right? I saved you money. If you look at the top funders on the SEIU No campaign, or on the SEIU, I sort of spilled the beans there, huh?
The No campaign.
The No campaign.
Yeah, right.
Which it's SEIU.
Right.
Number 1, SEIU. Number 2, SEIU. Number 3, SEIU. All the contributions are SEIU. Clearly, they've got a dog in this fight.
And SEIU is a Service Employees Union. Yeah. And so they obviously, I remember this originally because I've had run-ins with them a few times myself, just that they want the money for themselves, and this is a way to backdoor a lot more cash flowing into their pockets.
And one of the things I'm still trying to understand, originally I was told that if you wanted to take care of Mima, right, there's a mechanism in this so that you could actually get that money, the $36,000, and you sort of, it goes to you, right, and that's one of the appeals of the bill. I was told that you had to be a union member in order to receive that. And when I talk to the opposition people, they squeal really loud. Oh no, you don't have to be a union member. And that might be true. What happened with some of the other things is that initially you didn't have to be, and then there was a back door afterwards. Everyone that was doing this was required to do it.
Right.
And
they did that not long ago with another home health care.
With home health care.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to question, why is SEIU the primary sponsor of the No campaign? Why are they putting so much money into stopping this?
And preventing people
trying
having
to
choice.
stop, And this actually goes back not just to the No. The SEIU was part of, when we first were gathering signatures, they were part of a group, and included the DNC was part of this, and the ACLU was part of this.
Right.
They funded, and the SEIU immediately dropped, as soon as we turned our first initiative in, they dropped $250,000 to hire a bunch of people to come out and intimidate our signature gatherers.
Right.
And so they would come out, and we had these sheets of paper that first they would come out and they would intimidate the signature gatherers, chase them off so they wouldn't gather signatures. And then when the person went to the car, they would follow them to the car with a little flyer that said, hey, why don't you move to Florida? We'll give you $4,000. And you could make as much as $15,000 if you'll stay there until the end of December, which was our signature
deadline.
Period.
Yeah.
So there's big, there's big money there that was going to intimidate and entice people to go out of state. There's even bigger money if this thing passes that's going straight to the SEIU.
Right.
Or they wouldn't be spending this kind of money and fighting for it, right?
So that's why they're in opposition. So if people want to learn more about this, where would they go?
Let's go to letsgowa.com. No apostrophe, letsgowa.com. And you can find a video that talks about the long-term cares itself. And they can also go read the initiative itself. They can read all the details of it. There's a couple things I'd point out about it too, that it's not only does it let people out, but if you got out and want back in, the only way that happens, the legislature can't get their act together. This bill lets you get back in if you want to get back in.
Right. So it doesn't end it. It just gives you the option.
Correct.
It's not the Hotel California anymore.
Right.
Well, with that, Brian, thank you so much for coming in the studio and sharing this information with our audience. And I really appreciate that. I think they'll learn a lot more if they get a chance to see this.
My pleasure.
Listen to you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm really fortunate to have in the studio today Brian Heywood, the prime sponsor of Let's Go Washington. And if you've seen any of these signs out there or any of these other signs that I have here about the other initiatives, he's the prime sponsor and the reason why you have 4 initiatives on your ballot this year in Washington State, all of which can be summed up in Vote Yes, Pay Less, the theme that you have here. And Brian, I know that we've talked about some of these initiatives in more detail, but if you could just give our viewers a little bit of an overview of, this is the first time you've done something like this, first time anybody's done anything like this, but nevertheless, you're new to this process. You've had a lot of crazy experiences in the last year or so. Just share some of those stories. I've heard you talk about this occasionally in public forums, and so I'm really happy to have you here so you could maybe share some of these experiences, going to the editorial board, doing a debate down in the heart of darkness of Seattle, Just share some of those experiences if you could with our viewers.
Well, I just recently, so I've had 2. My first debate ever was with Reuven Carlisle, who was one of the authors of 2117.
And you've never had a debate before?
I've never debated before.
You weren't on the debate club.
Right, yeah, and yes, right. And that was actually more of a conversation really than a debate. But it was quite an interesting experience because, as you said, it was right smack in the middle of Seattle, at Seattle University. Audience not my fans, perhaps, is a way to say that. But it was a good exchange, right? And quite interesting to hear. And one of the big things that you begin to learn is what are they saying, and where's their weaknesses, and where do you find the truth, right? Because the truth is often in what they don't say. One of the questions for me on that one in particular was the mechanism, and this actually kind of goes back. I had also had a discussion at the editorial board at Seattle Times, and Joe Fitzgibbons, who was the other author. So Joe Fitzgibbons and Reuven Carlisle were the guys that wrote 2117. They should know it and know what's going on. And I'd asked at the Seattle Times, I'd asked, what's the mechanism to track? You've taken in $2 billion. It's getting doled out like lollipops. Jay and Z have called him the Lollipop King. He's the king of the Lollipop Guild. He's doling them out around the state like Wizard of Oz. And when you look at the actual grant applications, there's often nothing related to actual carbon output, and there's not even a requirement to track it. There's no mechanism that I can discern that would quantitatively measure whether the money that we're spending is having a measurable improvement on the environment, on the carbon output. And I asked that point blank to Joe Fitzgibbons, and his answer was, well, it'd be nice if we had something sophisticated, like an Excel spreadsheet where we could track it.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of taken aback that Excel was the sophisticated thing for the.
Yeah.
They weren't doing pen and paper.
Well, and the other question, of course, to me, whenever I see all this, is auditing. You know, like, is there any kind of auditing going on? We've seen problems
and there's
everywhere.
there's a requirement for them to report results, but there's no mechanism to actually track it.
Right.
There's nothing really to even. Well, we're gonna see the CO2 thing. Here's the another thing that came out of it. Sitting there, so we're now in 2024. We're at the end of the Biden administration. So Biden has been in office for almost 4 years, and we quit tracking in this state. The state quit tracking the carbon output in 2019. What happened in 2019? Who was it that was running for president from this state? So Jay Inslee running for president. Being the environmental, Al Gore wannabe, he's out there promoting it. I'm environment. And for some reason, we stopped tracking in 2019. Well, it's because carbon output was going up.
Right.
And all the things that he had been doing were not only not having an effect, were actually having perhaps a negative impact. It was getting worse.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Environment, you're the reason that the forest fires and the salmon are choking, right?
Right.
Quite astounding that this. So we quit tracking it. The state quit tracking it, and there's been nothing on there since. So I'm in this debate, and this happened now. It's happened twice in as many weeks. So I can tell it's a talking point. I'm talking to Mr. Carlisle, and he says, "Well, Trump stopped the tracking." Trump, wait. Biden's been in office for 4 years, and this is a Trump problem?
Been in office for 12.
Inslee's been for 12.
Yeah.
And this is a Trump problem?
Right.
Well, blah, 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 right? There was some sort of, the federal government, this and that. But Biden's been in office for 4 years. Why is this so they blamed it on Trump. So then I went up to Bellingham, which is even more interesting. Like, Bellingham is an interesting place. I went into the Bellingham City Club, and I don't know what I was in this. I don't think I was their favorite person, let's say, right? A club full of people, but they were polite and listened. But the woman, Sharon Shoemaker, was she the one?
The legislator up there?
Yeah, yes. So no, it wasn't. It was Alex Rummel.
Okay.
Was basically saying, again, blaming the fact that we haven't been tracking this. They were blaming it on Trump.
Right.
And it's just mind-boggling. Wait, this is an existential thing, and in the state we're spending tons of money. We're taking money from consumers, and we're spending it on things that we say are going to improve the environment. We have no mechanism, and when I call you on that, you say, "Oh well, it's Trump's fault."
Even though you used to track it and you decided not to anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to help a failed Democrat candidate for president.
Yeah, sort of
apparently.
suspicious on that. So it's that kind of inconsistencies that you find, and they clearly do not have a mechanism to track it. And that, to me, I've gone from opposed to it in general to vehemently being opposed to this thing. Right? The carbon tax is just a grift.
Did you ever expect when you started this process, because all these initiatives, essentially are here, it's been a long road getting here, but now suddenly they're on the ballot, everybody's getting their ballots, they can vote on them now. What's kind of the craziest thing that you've experienced? Just because I've seen these, all these attack ads that are coming out all the time, largest, biggest billionaires in this actually in America, and the country. You got Amazon and Microsoft and BP Petroleum and all these people attacking you. What's been the biggest surprise that you've had just in the last 6 months on this?
I don't know if it's a surprise. Really, in some ways, it's a confirmation of things that I thought might be true.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe the biggest though would be, and I don't want to play victim, but the sheer vitriol that comes at you when you dare to stick your neck out, right?
Right.
And number two would be the extent to which lawfare is used to punish anyone that goes against whatever the accepted story is. The PDC has been completely weaponized. The unions have put up lots of money to file lawsuits. There were secret lawsuits and it may be that one, right?
Right, the secret one. Yeah, that's
the
right.
The secret lawsuit might be the No campaign funded a lawsuit way back in January to get the initiatives disqualified. And really, they didn't sue us. They sued the Secretary of State.
Right.
And they said the way the Secretary of State counted the signatures, which they've been doing I think since the 70s or for quite some time.
Even earlier, yeah.
So they've been doing this for a long time. Now they said, well, the way they count those signatures is illegal or not sufficient. And that's what the basis of the lawsuit was. We didn't hear a word about it. No one said anything to us.
Yeah, they kept it secret from you guys.
Completely, yeah. And we were actually named in the lawsuit. When the AG's office defended the state and defended the Secretary of State, saying that we had done it, that the state had done it the right way, the AG's office itself noted that Let's Go had not been notified of this, right? It was part of their pushback against the lawsuit. But still, no press release. I mean, they didn't have to call us. Bob Ferguson does, I went back and looked, Bob Ferguson does a press release every 3.5 days.
Yeah, and he kept it secret.
This didn't get mentioned. When there was a lawsuit.
And conveniently, of course, people behind it also are his campaign donors.
Yeah, that's just pure coincidence.
I'm sure that's just a
coincidence. I don't think you can tie anything to that.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that it's the unions and Nick Hanauer and who are some of his biggest contributors. Yeah, that has nothing to do with this. Conversely, when there was a lawsuit to challenge the financial disclosure statement, right? Immediately he was out there, his office was, with a press release saying, we're defending freedom, right?
Right.
Well, where was that press release when you're defending freedom?
Right.
And the scary thing is that it went to, it got rejected, so that's good. Again, we didn't hear anything about it. It then went to, rather than going to an appeals court, they wanted to go straight to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And so it went to the Supreme Court. We didn't know. This went to the Supreme Court in August. The Supreme Court could have said, no, you didn't notify these other parties. We're not going to hear it. Right? And that's the thing that I really push back on is that the Supreme Court, because they accepted it, the potential that they could have kicked all 4 ballot initiatives off the ballot in August without us hearing one word or being able to defend them is unconscionable. It's ludicrous that happened.
And good for them.
Thank goodness. Yeah,
they rejected it.
They rejected it. They shouldn't have taken it in the first place, though, to be honest.
And you should have been notified in the beginning.
I found out about it only because a reporter, Jerry Cornfield, happened to be looking at the docket that morning. He assumed we knew about it, as one would, because one would have, we should have been told about it, and called us to get a comment.
Yeah.
And I was having a company party hosting all my employees at my house, and I get this call at like 2 in the afternoon saying, in 2 hours, the Supreme Court's looking at this thing.
Right.
And like you said, fortunately, it went our way, and they kept them on the ballot. But holy cow, that sort of shenanigan, like, really? This is the guy guy that wants to be governor of the state, doing this kind of thing in the dark.
Shady stuff, yeah.
That was really disappointing, I think.
Well, I know, one of the goals I had with this interview, and I hope that our viewers agree, is just this opportunity, knowing that there's these tens of millions of dollars of funding on TV and by some of the biggest corporations in America, and the billionaires coming out and attacking you and attacking these initiatives. I was hoping that this video kind of this interview gives an opportunity for just regular people, when they look down and they wonder what's going on here, to kind of hear it from you, not just the billionaires sending that stuff out. But
isn't it kind of funny too that it's these billionaires who fly their private jets that were specifically exempted from the carbon tax, from the hidden gas tax.
Right.
Jet fuel was specifically exempted from the carbon tax, which boggles the mind. So no tax on jet fuel.
Right.
But they're putting literally millions of dollars in to fight and make sure that the little guy pays an extra 50 cents per gallon at the pump.
Right.
And then, so that's sort of, to me, the irony of, Bill Gates sort of beating up on the little guy driving his 2002 Honda Accord that's about to fall apart, right?
Right.
That irony. And then the second one that's really been interesting to me is, so the Saul Alinsky tactic is you make someone a villain, right? And that's clearly what they've tried to do. Brian Heywood, he's a hedge fund guy. He came from California. I've been here since 2010. My kids all went to school here and raised and graduated from Washington schools. So I'm the bad guy. And what they do is they depending on what message they want, right? These billionaires have unlimited funds, have a huge amount of money they can put in. Because I put money into this process, I'm the bad guy buying an election. And I'm basically putting it on the ballot. The money that is coming, the billions that are lined up that can fund against us. It's literally billionaires, right?
Right.
But no, I'm the rich guy trying to buy stuff. It's just hilarious.
Yeah, it is. Well, if you're watching this video right now, I guarantee you probably have your ballot. You have an opportunity to look at those 4 initiatives, and you've had a chance here to listen to Brian Heywood, the sponsor of those initiatives. If you got any other questions or comments, feel free to leave those down below. And really appreciate you, Brian, for coming in here and giving me this opportunity to test out this new studio option here too, which is nice.
Gorgeous, yeah.
And if people want to learn more about what you're doing, where do they need to go?
I think the most important thing they need to know is vote yes, pay less, right? But the second most important thing would be to go to letsgowa.com. We've got all the information. We have videos, educational videos. We have our commercials we're putting up there. And also you can read the actual text of the initiative there if you want as well.
Okay, so go to letsgowa.com and find out more. And really appreciate everybody watching. Thank you so much. And thanks, Brian, for coming in the studio today.
My pleasure.
And for the live stream, this is the end of our program, and you got a chance to kind of see the whole thing unedited if you've watched it on the live stream. Again, if you have any comments or thoughts, feel free to leave those in the comment section down below. Feel free to share this with any of your friends who want to know more. It's a longer live stream, but you'll probably see some of these video clips out there in other sorts of format. Thank you so much for logging in on a Saturday to check us out. And once again, Brian, thank you so much for coming in.
It's my pleasure to be here.